So it's like creating a space where everybody can sit around the table and contribute to the mission to make sure that there's that vibe. That is exceptional. Other question. What are the best practices for creating a positive and engaged work culture? Best practices for creating a positive and engaged work culture.
I have an accounting background, okay? And some of us don't like numbers, don't like to focus on numbers, right? I believe numbers is what drives business. If you look at goal and objective of the business, even in a non-profit organization or environment, you need to set goals and objectives. You need to have KPIs, key performance indicator. It doesn't mean that when we're in a non-profit organization, it doesn't mean that we don't manage money or that the business doesn't generate money. The business is supposed to generate money. Yes. We reinvest the money to acquire more resources to further the cause. Yes. But we need to have goals and objectives. We cannot just say we're doing this for the cause and we're not measuring our progress. It's very important to measure our progress. Yes, it challenges us. Yes, it's not fun. Yes, we have to be accountable. But you have to challenge yourself. And that, I remember I was working for this company, this for-profit company, and for years the company had the same number of bookings. And one time the manager said, okay, if we do surpass the bookings of this year and we reach 55 million, we're all going on a cruise. So everybody in the business wanted to go to the cruise. So typically, usually it's the responsibility, for example, of the operations department to generate money. Non-profit organizations rely solely or a lot on the founder. So sometimes people around are not motivated, they wait for the founder to do things. But if they're driven by numbers, goals and objectives, and they get a clear vision, they all will feel like they have to carry the business. And that's what we have to instill in our organizations. It's not because we're a nonprofit that we don't have to be operationally sound and generate money.
And that's an excellent point, because I think we approach nonprofit because of historical barriers, as if, and let's be clear, Canada is just now getting us what we are owed, right? Let's be honest, like for the past 2 years, it's as if, everybody has a black square somewhere on their Instagram or social media. And you know what? As it should, because for the past 400 years, Black Canadians, it's as if we've been vegan going to a steakhouse, and then they still give us a bill. Because every time they pass at Treasury and the new bill came in for 400 years, what did we get? Our fair share of taxes.
Right.
And we paid it.
Yeah.
We're like, wait, we don't eat meat. Yeah, but just pay it. Right? We don't eat meat, right? And for the past 2 years, we're finally saying, okay, let's split the bill accordingly, right? So in the word accountant, there's accountability. Accountability is my love language. And by that I mean, when you hire in your nonprofit organization, pay people well.
Yes.
Pay them what they are worth so that they could fully dedicate themselves to working for you. In the tech sector, if I have a dev or a data scientist that I dare to underpay, he will be as loyal as a backstabbing, slaving, I swear, right? So for me, I make sure I set up systems where not only do I pay you well, I pay you your worth, and I will go a step further. There's a lot of, duplicating and mirroring what other white nonprofits are doing, which are patriarchal driven, not enough women at the top. We, as black people, come from a simple system. When our black women succeed, we succeed.
Yes.
You see a successful black woman, it's a successful black family. Period. I don't care what everybody says. A successful black woman, there's a successful family behind it. So I truly, honestly also believe, my father used to tell me, Terry, don't forget, you're the head of the family, but your wife will be the neck. I truly believe in the fact that that was almost true, because there needs to be more black women in front of these national entities, not just local. They need to be paid well, so they don't have to make a choice between family and the work that they do. So if you want to keep them passionate, employees passionate, pay them well, promote and push for black queens being in positions of power, and also for them to be able to bring a different perspective to the table. So I think that when you get into a work environment like this, you pay people well, you encourage them to have a roadmap, an HR roadmap to success. You're actually nurturing a culture where people are comfortable expressing themselves, comfortable saying, hey, that doesn't work well. And it's not because we disagree that I disrespect you. That would be the last thing I say. Because I think in our community sometimes we tend to also take a lot of things personal. Disagreeing with you does not mean that I disrespect you. It means that I think that we could tweak something or work on something. So I think receiving things from people that are working with us creates this kind of positivity in terms of culture. And not to duplicate other things, like, oh, they do it like this, and so on and so forth.
It's like church in here. Amen. Good job. Good stuff, bro. Thank you for that. In summary, it's like proper incentives keeps your team engaged, keeps them contributing. Yes. 1 second.
Please, if you have questions, raise your hands. If not, I might monopolize a bit the conversation. I was looking so much forward to this conversation, and I'm very happy to find out that it's going the direction that I want. You know, I also tend to understand a bit why in FACE we have a lot of accountants. You know, now I can see where it's coming from. Leadership influence. Regarding the culture, I just wanted to add something also. Values, right? We spoke about the mission statements. What are our values? And do we live by those values? And do we set the example? So the leadership, you have the values. And if those values is an environment free of sexual harassment, an environment where, you know, there's respect, there's integrity, you know, we are a family, you know, an environment where, you know, we agree to disagree, you know, free of retribution from the leadership because you said something, you know, I think that's very important in terms of the culture. I have a question for you guys. We'll be speaking about this positive and everything and etc. And in most black organizations, nobody is, you know, as if changing their head is a problem. I'm happy to see that a group said apparently it happened. Succession planning, you know.
Yes.
Can you touch a bit about it and how that will impact the positive you know, environment of the nonprofit and even draw in people?
That's a wonderful question.
Great question.
Planning. Could we go back a little bit to your question about proper compensation?
Sorry, hold on. Let me give you the mic so you can record it.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to chat because you're just like wrecking my speech. But what I want to say is, you know, believing in ourselves and what we're worth. And does the nonprofit sector contribute to that underpaying of our people? Because for example, I'll tell you a little story. I hope we're in the vault of silence and confidentiality here. You know, I lead the Black Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub at Carleton, and I looked at the budget. I'm a numbers person too. And so when I looked at the budget, I'll use an example. We have a comms person. The salary was trash. And when I talked to them, I was like, how did you come up with this salary? And it was made by somebody at Carleton, and I'm not gonna say they're racist, but I said, a Carleton employee in this job makes this much, and you budget this much for us. What's different? Is their responsibility different? Well, we benchmark community. I'm like, it's the same job. Does that mean that as a community they're paying less bills? They're getting a subsidy on their task? And I know that nonprofits tend to do that and also take advantage of community. I do so much free consulting, like, and then they get funding, they don't call you back, don't do anything, right? The second thing around that is, I was at a meeting yesterday, and quite by chance, somebody got a contribution agreement from ESDC, and when I looked at, they were like, oh, can you help me with this? I looked at it, and they cut their funding that they were being originally offered. They were offered like half. And so I said, you need to change your scope, because how are you going to do this? Is one of the problems, right? We're so desperate for money, we accept money, and we're doing the same scope for little work, and makes us look incompetent because we actually can't do it properly. But this lady, when I looked at it, you know where most of the budget was cut? On the salaries. So now she's going to be like a slave working to accomplish these tasks. You know, and I'm wondering, how do we, as a group here, contribute to that? Because I went back to ISED, and I said, we really need to change the salaries, and we need to do this. In fact, we didn't even have raises, and look at inflation now, almost 10%, right? And so I'm like, we don't have any inflation. Inflation is this, all this stuff. I'm pushy, so I kind of won. But when I think about other organizations who don't trust themselves and know their worth, how do we contribute as a group to that? So that's my question to you guys and to our audience.
Look forward to hearing you speak after Andrea. I'm excited. So that's great question. And so now we have two questions. So you have Andrea's answer and you have brother's answer about succession.
Very good question. I remember working for this nonprofit organization that I'm not going to say the name. And at first, it was very striving. It was non-subsidized. They were generating their own money. They were very active. They were creative thinkers in order to manage the budget, pay people, and work. Eventually, the government noticed what they were doing. They gave them a subsidy, and all of a sudden, that creativity just left the room. All of a sudden, since they had salaries that were planned and everything, they wouldn't work as much because now the revenue was guaranteed. If we don't give ourselves goals and objectives, we will continue to do the same things we're doing and we'll be satisfied doing it. Problem is, if somebody subsidizes the organization, eventually, if you don't meet your numbers, you will be at risk and you won't have the same budget. So you have to stay creative. You have to diversify the revenue stream. It's not a one-man, one-woman show. It's an organization. The organization usually is supposed to have members. You're supposed to have a board, so a lot of people have to contribute to that problem that we're trying to solve. When we talk about succession planning, one of the things we have to understand, even structurally, legally, we don't own our organizations. We're the face of it, but we don't own them. Yeah. Right? So even though we're working very hard, we're contributing to a cause and everything, we have to think that we're not going to be there forever. And if you have enough members and you don't do what you're supposed to do, they could kick you out. So if you start thinking about the potential of the organization and bringing more people in, it will help the organization grow. It's not a one-person show. It's a cause that we're trying to solve. So therefore, there needs to have to be a lot of people. The diversifying the revenue stream is very, very, very strategic and important. You cannot depend on subsidies. You have to be able to find ways to grow the organization. If there are subsidies, very happy about it, but you can't depend only on them, and you can become less creative when you have them.
And I'd like to add to this, and I'll answer Queen first, because I have a real opinion on that one. I'll come back to this. I think for us as black communities, we tend to forget that they seem to always experiment with us. I'm seeing Queen Malika, hi, sorry. She used to braid my hair when I was playing basketball. Huh? No, she used to braid my hair when I was playing basketball. Long story short, we have to be careful because I think they actually use community work for black people as a micro way to do macro things to us, and I'll explain myself. If you look at our countries, I'm Haitian descent, whether you're from Africa, Caribbean, whatever, you have a system that actually creates chaos, and they do in our organizations, right, by underfunding us, or putting us in a perpetual business of subsidies. Yeah. So it makes us feel almost like beggars. Now, my father always told me, Terry, name me a second world country or developing country that ever got freedom out of international aid. It is preposterous. It does not make sense. So to his point, as far as black emancipation through community work, leaders, a leader that gets into power into your nonprofit and does not have a clear strategy to diversify the streams and to emancipate themselves from a government that comes and gives you a handout, you are just duplicating these systems that are macro-colonial, which are literally affecting all of our black countries. All of them. Right? We receive money, then we have a white overseer plantation runner that says, oh, we'll give money to black people in the forms of weapons, and then these weapons end up in gangs, and then so on and so forth. It's Haiti 101, right? And you also have rice dumping, and then next thing you know, and they do it in our community. They do it in our nonprofits, not with the rice and all that stuff, but then they'll donate communication work. And then they'll give it to an entity in Montreal called Sidley. Do you think Sidley works for $50,000? Sidley is Cirque du Soleil. They will send a bill to the Jewish Association, the Chinese Association. They'll send a bill to Red Cross for $500,000, and then they'll donate. They'll rice dump the marketing to you. But when you manage your own, then they'll earmark it for $45,000, because they'll tell you, yeah, but you should be happy that you're getting $45,000. So any leader in this room that is running a nonprofit, it is your duty to not duplicate these systems that on our macro level, you see it. You go to Africa, you have 16 democracies out of how many? Where it's perpetual leadership creating these corrupted things. We see it in nonprofit. The daughter comes in, the son comes in, the cousin comes in, and then eventually there's nothing. And then the government comes, pulls the funding, and the entity dies, right? So we have to be super careful in not letting these colonial systems come in and corrupt. I'll use the word corrupt. Corrupt our leadership. Instead, fight to get more money, pay people well, be a team, be solid. They won't take down a team. They'll take down one leader, though. And then when you don't, they'll kick you out, just like they do on a macro level. So I think we have to be extremely careful with this whole pay structure. We should, like Queen Andrea did, demand, not ask, demand. Why are you giving me $45,000, yet I know for a fact that this association that is non-melanated like us has a budget for $100,000, $120,000 for the same marketing job, or did an event with a company that was paid $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. We, for one, as a tech companies, we create websites and work with nonprofits all the time. The nonprofits that look us in the eyes and pay us what we're worth, we will work with you. Yeah. The ones that don't will say, God bless you, have a good life, but we will not diminish our worth. And for the succession portion, we come from a culture of griot. This is what black people do. White people write everything. They do. Why? Because when the white man comes, history starts, right? Same thing with us. We tell each other, this is how I used to do it. This is how I used to. Data. Yeah. We have to become data-driven nonprofits and for-profit. Everything should be database, in the cloud, clear ways to execute on certain things. The problem is, it's in our culture. We talk, we discuss, we pass on knowledge. That's why when an elder dies, a library dies, right? And we say, how did he used to do it? He was running the nonprofit for 30, 40 years. Mm-hmm. So we have to stop. It's unfortunate, but in a tech-driven world, we can no longer be griots. We have to get away from a griot mentality in the nonprofit space and move towards a data-driven and tech-driven kind of entities that will demand respect from the federal government. Because when they come, what do they tell us? Oh, that's anecdotal, Andrea. Yes. Ayana, yeah, that's an example, but do you have any tangible proof? But when you come with data to the city of Montreal, yes. And you say, like, they dared to cancel Carrie Fiesta in Montreal.
Yes.
If you come to Montreal and say, hey, $338 million goes back to Toronto with Carrie Fiesta. Montreal say, really? Yeah, we have the data. They can't fight numbers.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's the problem in our communities. We're griot cultures, we talk, we have a lot of anecdotal, but anecdotes are experiences that should be translated into data, and data in this day and age is the way to fight white colonial structures that are not made for us.
Well said.
Amen.
Actually, I got a couple of plugs too. There's Dr. Pierre, who's currently doing the research on the pension plans for people in Quebec specifically. So if you guys, I'm not sure if you guys have heard about the research that he's doing. He's currently collecting data for that. It's an exceptional, it's huge. If you guys want more information about that, please reach out. It'll be my pleasure to share. And actually, on the same topic, I want to share something else with you guys. There's a tool that we use called Traction. Okay, I strongly recommend everybody check it out. Traction, the EOS system. A lot of the fundamentals that we're speaking about here, Traction has a full layout. And actually, another plug to David Cassius. He's one of our process mappers within our organization, and he sits on our board as the secretary. But it helps with everything we're discussing, but it gives you the full breakdown on how to implement it, how to get your team on board, everything from vision, data, everything like that. So these are huge nuggets that we've been using, and it's my pleasure to share them with you all, because it's huge, huge, huge. All right, our last question. How are we doing for time? Okay, good. We're right on time. All right, guys, at 10 o'clock, we're going to take a quick break. So this is the last question for now, and then once we come back from a break, our panelist, Andrew, is going to be up. All right, so how can leaders manage the unique challenges faced by Black-led organizations? Oh, sorry, I just jumped ahead. Black-led and ethno-cultural diverse organizations, such as lack of resources, financial and human, and the need to collaborate with other organizations.
You have that.
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. That part, I'm gonna be selfish and plug my company. I mean, that's what Happily was founded on. We used to maximize our credit cards. I actually sold a property to start one of my business. Collaborate with Malala Yousafzai, as you know, and Vice President Al Gore in Montreal. And the city of Montreal, I'm calling out people, I don't care. City of Montreal is gaslighting me. I said, I want to bring 5,000 black and brown kids to come and listen to Malala's message. And they promised us 100,000. I wanted to bust them in to come and hear her speak. And last minute, they said, well, we'll only give you 10,000, should be lucky for it. So I had to sell one of my properties, which is a true story. Sold my properties, got separated over it, and created a whole lot of chaos in my life to actually make sure that I did not default on that promise I made to Queen Malala. And she came to Montreal. We had 3,500 kids. The city of Montreal was willing to support a lot of white schools, but we're not willing to support black schools. So I put $198,000 of my money after selling that property to bus in kids from Montreal North and all these areas. Kids that as you know, I pay kids to read books. That's also something I've been doing for 10 years. And then for me, it was, how do I make sure this never happens to me, a nonprofit or for-profit? And that's how I came up with Happily. I said, there should be a tool that aggregates all of the funding opportunities and connects you based on your profile. So if you're in environment, if you are in economic development, there is funding out there, but you need to be plugged into it. And part of these projects, I got to give a shout out to Queen Ayana and her team. I did because of the Black Community Association in Côte des Neiges and the work that they've been doing. So for me, it was, how do I create a platform where you come in, this is who I am. Like, I'll give an example. Black woman from Toronto, Muslim, that happens to be from the LGBTQ plus community as well, right? Well, there is a lot of funding for you, right? There's 1.1 billion out there, and then the dashboard creates it for you and leverages AI, kind of like a Grammarly, but instead of correcting for grant writing mistakes, for grammar mistakes, it corrects for grant writing mistakes. So it helps you write the grant if you've never done it. And it's also available for nonprofits. So for me, leaders, the best thing you could do if you're leading a nonprofit, be aware of the tools that are out there and exist for you to actually be able to get the money, to diversify your funding. So that's why I'm like shamelessly plugging what we're doing, and it's a portal that also works for nonprofits, for-profits, creatives, artists, and I think we should leverage technology to access more funding and more money in 2023. And the last thing I'll say also is collaborate.
Yes.
I see a lot of people, they got a bag, George Floyd, King Floyd dies, and now, white Canada feels guilty and gives us money. They should give us more. That's a different story. And then now a lot of people have money, but everybody's working in silos.
Yes.
And everybody's creating their budget and saying, give me this. But BNI is doing it. Give me that. No, wait, DLF is doing it. Give me this. Oh, I'll do it in French because they're not doing it in French. No, Black Knowledge Hub is there. So me, as the founder of Happily, I have to tap into Andrea. And I have to tap into you in Vancouver. And I'm already tapped in with Queen Ayana and her team. And I got to tap in with everybody and say, hey, how do we connect? That's why for us, there's 4 key parts to accelerating any movements, nonprofit or for-profit. Access to capital, that's why FACE was founded. Access to networks, access to mentorship, and access to knowledge, period. You solve these 4 things, you will have a successful nonprofit because the community will want to tap into either one of these 4 things. And if you want to collaborate by any way, shape, or form, come and see us because that's what we do. We connect you through Happily, leveraging AI, to money, but also to accelerators, incubators, as well as mentorships and also knowledge hubs. So the next steps is also connecting, we're in the negotiation with CARICOM. And then we want to go to Africa because we think that we should reverse this triangular oppressive thing that they created, and we should connect back to all of these spaces that are resource rich. The people are impoverished, but the countries are not poor. So let's demystify that.
Well said. Thank you, brother. Thank you.
How do you go after that? I mean, what can I say? I like the collaboration thing, and I'm amazed, like, I've been working with Group 3737, so obviously I'm amazed at what we do, but the fact that we're able to have all these organizations coming like at 9 o'clock in the morning in Montreal, talking how we could work together, better things. Now there's more access to capital, okay? So we don't have to chase all kinds of different subsidies, even though we're not good at doing everything. I think we should start specializing our organization. We all have skill sets. We all have skill sets. We cannot do everything.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's okay. It's okay if you have other organizations that you collaborate with that are doing what you cannot do.
Well said.
And that, I think, we're on the verge of doing that gradually if we're able to have more platform or events like these where we collaborate, we discuss, we share ideas, we share concerns, we share best practices, it will help. But one of the things that we've seen, we've tried to do, like every organization have like 10 mission statement and trying to do everything for grant. It doesn't work. It hasn't worked. Now we have more money, even though we could get more, obviously. But we have more money now, so we could focus now on what is it that we do best, what is it that we excel in, specialize in that, and leave it to other organizations to do other things. And then when you perform in what you're good at, you will be successful.
And you can license to other people who have that need and make some money.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well said.
Duplication doesn't work. It doesn't work. We need to collaborate. We need to discuss. We need to see where each other are like best, and then focus on that. We need more of these, more meetings like these where we collaborate, we talk to each other and everything. And then if we want something from the government or if we want something for corporate Canada, we go as a team to get it.
Correct.
You know, there's power in numbers. I mean, there's. Simple fact.
They've been using the divide and conquer.
Yes.
That's why it's been working. I see my elders. I see King Rustam in the back. That is my OG, because I'm an economic guy and I'm a business guy. If it wasn't for King Rustam pulling us all in together, because I was going in burning the house. I was Malcolm X and all this. Thank God we had an MLK, because, true story, when FACE was co-founded, everybody was going to the government at once, and the government loved it. It was like, oh, all right, we'll deal with this one, we'll deal with this one. And then King Rustam said, I remember this conversation clearly, he said, there's strength in numbers, we have to build a coalition. And next thing you know, $330 million, we should have had $400 million for 400 years at least, but $330 million came in, and that's because BBI from Halifax, BCA from Montreal, Group 3737. When you come to the Trudeau administration, or any administration, with 150 years of servicing black community, you're able to tell them, we don't need any overseer. This is ours. This is not a plantation. We're not going to duplicate this. We'll run this, right? But if you come one at a time, and you divide and conquer, oh, this one is running off the plantation. This one is bad. This one is picking slowly cotton. This one is faster. That's what ends up happening. They love it. They love it because then they get to pick and choose who they want. They get to pick and choose leaders that they build, and then they take down whenever they don't need them, and that is a problem. But when we're together and we're like, hey, Andrea does what Andrea does. Vancouver does Vancouver does. Ayana does what Ayana. BBI does what BBI. And we're all on the same page. Y'all ain't dividing nothing. Cities can't say no, provinces can't say no, and more importantly, countries can't say no. And I would argue that Canada is an economic plantation for black and brown people. They know it. Sorry to say, but they know it. And now is the time for us to truly come together. That's why I agree with King Greg. We come together since 2020. I think billions and billions of dollars are going to come our way with the data that we're going to show and the results. No more anecdotes and experience and my grandmother and my neighbor and da-da-da. We're going to see a massive generational change in the next couple of years or decades, in my opinion.
Amen. Amen.
Wow. Yes, please.
Can we be real? Of course.
So, we have the brain power. I mean, I'm listening to you and I'm like, man, if I could speak like that guy when I was his age, man, I'll be so far, right? So we have the brain power. We have very smart people, very intelligent people, but our mentality. Look, I'm sometimes bothered, right? Because as much as we have this aspiration, as much as some do this wonderful job, sacrifice, I mean, man, I will not sell my house for a black man. I mean, that's the truth. Yeah, I can understand for the kids. But what I mean is, if we don't, and I feel very passionate about this, and all to the conferences, I try to raise this. If we don't look at ourselves, understand our own brokenness in terms of not wanting to change, as you say, that mentality, let it come from the white man or even from ourselves, because we can blame the white man just as much. But, so you know already what he did. So what are you going to do, right? You know, if we cannot change that partnerships, you know, I don't want to take much time. I met somebody in Vancouver when I came to Canada. He sat down and he spoke to me about the whole nonprofit ecosystem, about the whole things I could do, and I had a tear, and he was like, oh, why is this grown-up man even nearly crying? For me, it was incredible that a black man will share to that level because I never encountered it. So we need to understand that the progress of my brother in no way diminishes me.
Yeah. Yes, amen.
It can
Amen.
only
Record with the government, and they steal the idea.
Yep.
Right? And now, like, that's the trust issue that we have to solve, right? And the thing is, that person is not going to do it as well as you, and they're not going to be successful. They're still going to have a problem instead of doing it with you, right? And we have to break that.
So true, Queen.
That's true.
It's all about trust too, and I would not negate though, sorry, I want to add to what he said.
Yep.
Don't underestimate also the engineering of mistrust amongst one another by the system. Eventually we also have, and I'm not about blaming, I'm all about like empowering ourselves and doing it ourselves, but we cannot also turn a blind eye to what all of this will do to a human being, right? So the mistrust comes from somewhere. Willie Lynch had a method, right? And it worked. It worked. It's still paying dividends today. So for me, I'm not about like, I'm not a victim. I ain't no victim. Me? Are you crazy? My neighbors all my neighbors think I'm a drug dealer. All of them. But they don't know how hard I work. They really say, they see me, they're like, this guy can't live in this neighborhood, right? So for me, I'm not a victim. I'm not promoting that. What I'm saying is, don't gaslight me about what you've done to me, because there's an entire generation of white folks that are fighting to forget what their ancestor did, while we are fighting to make sure they remember. And that is very, very important, because we could talk about, no, it doesn't have any impact, but we know it does. It is scientific literature is clear on what it does to people, right? So the mistrust in our community is not just us mistrusting one another out of nowhere. because we come, like I said, a culture of griot. We used to trust each other. We used to be collective. We're the origin, on est l'origine, on est la genèse. The genesis of community is us. What we've built, what we've accomplished. Now we just got to get back to this. And I think it starts with technology. And I know that that's another gap. Just when we get into real estate, they're in technology, right? So we kind of missed this entire boat. Now real estate's not affordable anymore. But let me tell you something, technology and black-led nonprofits that leverage technology, y'all are gonna see a whole different scenario for yourself in the next 5 years. And the one that don't, you're gonna slowly disappears. You will slowly go out of business because you are in a business. Oh, we're just started. Well, you're a startup. And you should adopt this for-profit startup mentality. And if you've been a nonprofit for years, you should adopt best practices that are for-profit because the government sees you as an investment.
Right.
You might not see yourself as an investment as a nonprofit. Trust me. Trudeau, if you're in Quebec, Legault, whoever, they see you as an investment because you're taking tax-paying dollars that they got to be accountable for. So if you ain't creating jobs, if you ain't reducing poverty, though they're contributing to this poverty cycle, you are not worthy of their investment. So stop this mentality of nonprofit, I need money, I need resources. No. Diversify your stream of income, collaborate, don't hate on somebody that does something better than you, come together as one, and more importantly, hold them accountable. And by them, I mean the people that try to gaslight you as well.
Right.
Introduce yourself.
I'm Ayana, co-BCA. He said to introduce myself. I just wanted to touch a little bit on just in general. I mean, we've all been in community for a minimum amount of years, and I think what's important that we often seem to forget, and gentlemen here spoke to it in a way that I don't totally agree with, but yes, there's archetypes in our society right now. There are the historical people who've put things in place, but they've also left a stain behind. And when we talk often about, we can't be like them and we shouldn't continue to, we're not. I don't want to be pigeonholed into that. We are a new generation that's coming into nonprofit. We're bringing our children with us. We're bringing, new thoughts, new specializing expertise, and we can't go back into this idea, well, that's how we always did it, and that's, have to follow the same way. We keep those people on the board because they do have that historical knowledge and that information, but they can't be running the organization, and we can't have that assumption that they have to run the organization. We have to follow this mission statement. We need to change the mission statement. I think we go in and this is what we do, we have to do it. Like, why? We change the mission statement. It has to be from the bottom up, and I think people keep forgetting that. And when we're talking about getting people in and paying them what they're worth, if I pay everyone what they're worth, I have no money in my organization. So that is also something that I take into consideration when I'm writing a grant funding, and I have to be logical. $100,000 times 4 people, that's, if I'm writing a grant for 500 grand, what am I doing for my programming? So there is the mindset of, yes, we want to pay people what they're worth, but how can we do that to leverage them outside of their contract? So can we share them with other organizations? Can we ask them to a part of their time as volunteer? I think if we think about only paying people, and of course with the influx of what we were allowed to do, what they allowed us to get with the murder of George Floyd, is we're now seen. However, we're seen by everyone. So that tech entrepreneur that could come work for me and would have came and worked for 80K is going to go somewhere else and work for 120. And I can't compete with that. And that is a reality that we have to take into consideration, not omit, but definitely take into consideration and change the way that we offer a benefits package. It can't just be compensation. And that is the hierarchy that we're used to, right? There's a leader and they get paid this and this person gets paid this and he's under me. We have to flatten our organization and change the model of an organizational structure of an NPO. It is not the way the corporate structure is. We need to do it internally as far as finance and succession planning, but we can't do it the way we treat HR and human resources.
Well said.
Well said, very well said. This has been an awesome, awesome session, a great panel. Looking at the time, we burst the time completely. Okay, so guys, so first, if we could just give a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you. You guys want to just give your handles one more time for anybody who wants to follow you guys, connect with you guys after the fact?
Cherry, like Thierry Henry, Lindor, like the chocolate, and Happily, www.happily, H-A-P-P, like apply, but you put an H.ai.
Thank you.
Greg Excellent or Gregory Excellent is for me.
Amazing. So guys, so now we're going to take a quick break. There's water and stuff in the hall. You guys please help yourself. And then we're going to be back in like 5 minutes. You're supposed to have 15, but it's like 5. Okay, so go to the bathroom. We'll get some water. Come right back. And then we have Andrea Pierce who's going to be blessing us. Thank you.
Shut it off.
Sir? Yes, sir.
Always, great talking.
We need to talk though.
Amazing, man. Amazing.
Greg, it's always a good time. Whether it's on the radio, whether it's always a good time.
So the Carrot Fiesta,
Yeah, there's a couple people like. I think Hope Tatset's gonna have to get involved. From what I'm understanding with the city.
And so what? In what capacity?
As a fiduciary, I think that's what they're asking for.
Okay. So
I don't know that I agree with that, but
well, because I think what the thing is that there's no problem. Yeah.
We're gonna speak today since we're seeing
Yes,
each other.
we're here for the day.
Me and
Yeah.
crazy.
No stress.
so your wife used to have like you see your mom will see it like yes.
Yeah. Good. No, hey, I know what it's like. So no stress at all. Glad you're here. Yeah. Okay. Yes. We got 5 minutes.
I remember sitting down at the sports complex in my hair. And when you did my hair was tight.
But so what are your thoughts on what's happening with the character?
I don't know much. I heard there's structural issues as well. But
You know what's funny?
I guess the structural issues are so bad that if because Valley Fund is not she's closer to an ally than something else. So if they decide that they're just going to scrap it, something's wrong.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They never said they were going to scrap it.
And stuff, and also, I mean, it's been there for so long. I don't remember what year, but I remember young going through it.
Yeah.
It's something that, it's a hallmark of the city. We need to get involved. So sometimes we let people, we just let people do things for all of us.
Exactly.
If they're not able to do it, then somebody else take the lead and create a new board and start over.
That's exactly. But the thing is, so what I had proposed, because I said the issue was the organization, but not the culture, not the parade or whatever. So there's a lot of different organizations, culturally based organizations that can take the lead, that can get involved. Like so that's why. But the thing, what I realized, I mean, speaking with Gedrick and stuff, is that they don't know these. They don't. It's just that their access to the information is very limited. So they've always just looked at the current organization.
There's also something fundamentally wrong that the Carry Fiesta, out of all things, depends.
Running, then
We might have no idea who we were. We're saying organization. I have no idea who organizes it.
Okay, so the organization itself is called Carry Fiesta. So it's not that's it. It's an organization. They control the parade. There's a guy named Everest who lives in Toronto. Exactly.
Okay. I didn't know that.
No, I know obviously I know all the history. I've been involved from a long time, and it was just when we tried to help, it was like the level of ignorance and it was like a weird kind of old school mentality where we're like, yo, you guys are progressive, you're not thinking out the box, you're not welcoming other collectives, other cultures. It was weird. So we're like, we stepped away, and that's what we see happen. We knew it was just a matter of time. So hi, love.
Hello. How are you?
Nice to meet you.
But the thing with the subsidies and the creativity, it's not because they see the West, for example.
Yeah.
You guys have a lot of self-generated funds. You have members contributing. You have all kinds of stuff that you bring to get money in. Every time our organization depends solely on subsidies, it's everything fair.
No, 100%. So what I would like to do, I sent a letter to 3737 because I said, look, we should come together as like administrative organization, see what's the best way to get this thing this year to be able to solve it. like when you're reaching out to organizations, a lot of orgs don't want to take the reach out. They're like, yeah, okay, it's a thing in itself, which is understandable because that's a whole business.
Yeah, it's big.
So when I proposed this to you, I said, look, let's get like administrative orgs together. Let's see. Just for this year, create like an ad hoc committee, just to make it happen. Here's the budget that we need, bring it on the road, support the band leaders, whatever. And the people in the community who step up, who want to write, create a new organization, we support them as an organization, and let them carry it for next year. Right? You know,
But is the city considering that, or the city?
I submitted the proposal to them. I've been talking to them last 2 days. Yeah, so you know, so it's great. I mean, you know, like, because this is what I said. It's like, for me, this is my mandate. Like, I'm here for community support.
Right.
So anything when there's something on a social side, that's where I come in.
Right.
Because this is definitely something that impacts me heavily. I said, okay, cool, let me get involved. So we reached out, we tried to get somebody else to no one else was down. Like, okay, so then we'll send them the letter, we'll support it. But as soon as we find somebody else, I even called the community associations, maybe they would take it. But again, it's just whoever we get to take the lead, we'll just support them. And if we have an organization, then we put the bodies together, we just create a new organization. Remember, it's not to be complicated, you know?
They shouldn't. The return, the tourists that come and everything,
No, that's a whole different story.
you know, the sponsors as well. You have several companies that need exposure and everything. So there's a lot of things that could be done.
Right away, I would start bringing in, I do recruitment.
Right,
I
yeah.
would start bringing in people. Because Montreal price is low. I bring them in, I would have to put a message out, come down.
No way, there's a lot of, like you said, there's several potential. You just have to do it, and you just have to think out of the box. And that's the thing that seems that this organization is not able to do.
That's why you're 12. So that's what it is. All right, let me get everybody back to order. All right. Hello. All right. So we'll take, yes.
I wanted to ask you something regarding the interaction US system.
Yes, yeah.
Because I couldn't get all the notes, so
Okay.
what exactly is it?
It's to manage your organization, yeah. It's called Traction. Like when you Google Traction EOS, you'll find it.
Traction US.
Yeah, that's my card. Cool. It manages your systems to it. All right, it gives you processes, everything, tools, like you name it, you got it. And David Cassius, if you look up David Cassius, he's the guy who helps us with it. The guy named David Cassius. All right, so we are back. Yeah. 2 minutes? I think, well, it's just her and me. So, yeah, I'm just going to be sitting here and it's just Andrew.
Okay, so if there are questions, I'm going to keep them.
Awesome, thank you, brother. All right, so as we're coming back to our seats, let me reset this. Yeah, I guess I'll get from mine. Or maybe check it. All right, let's get back to our seats. I hope everybody had a chance to run to the washroom and get some water. Let's dive in. I love it. I love the networking. I love it. Good stuff. Anytime, Greg.
No, I have it in the back. I'm going to give you a clicker so that you can control it yourself, all right? Okay, just give me.
All right. Good. So, Andrew, come on up. Yeah. All right, guys. So now we're going into our special guest, our speaker for this morning, the one and only Andrea Pierce. Can I get a round of applause, please? We're glad to have her. She represents the Black Economic System, the Black Entrepreneurial Knowledge Hub. That's Beck, and there, as you guys know, those who participated, Beck was here with us in the month of end of February, to do a series of workshops. They blessed us with all kind of support, all kind of information. You guys came out as a community, and we're blessed to have the executive director with us today. The floor is yours, sister.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh my God, I was so inspired by the 2 panelists. They are amazing. Let's give them another round of applause. Everything they said is so germane, so important, so foundational to what we as a community need, seriously, I got chills, I got like everything, goosebumps, because these are the things we need, and it's so amazing to have this conversation. And they blew a lot of what I was gonna say out of the water, but I'm gonna go. I'm very much of a storyteller, even though I love data. My minor in university economics and sociology with a minor in statistics. And I'm an MBA. And it's so funny, I went to a church, and my pastor, whenever you want to suggest something new, I learned my innovation from him, he would say, what are you doing that's different? You can't do the same thing another person in the church is doing, and you have to build a business case. He didn't call it a business case then, but I learned in school in my MBA that it was a business case. And he would like, who's coming? Who's interested in this? What are the numbers? How much does it cost? All this stuff. So, community resources are so important. Today, I want to say good morning to all of you wonderful people. And I hope we're in a vault, because I'm going to be very open and honest, and let's have that conversation. So I want to say we're all here, people in pursuit of nonprofit excellence and in pursuit of outcomes that make, the most important thing, outcomes that make a positive impact on the lives of others at work, in the community, and in the world. We live in a time when the size and complexity of the issues that we're facing are so huge. We have such urgency of global challenges, and it calls for a different kind of leadership. And today the topic was about nonprofit excellence. What excellence looks like is very subjective. That's different for everybody, and it's also changed over time. The big question is, what should leadership excellence look like to address the global crisis, the community crisis that we're facing today? In speaking to the seriousness of our present challenges, this year, the Science and Security Board of the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists moved the hands of the doomsday clock forward. The clock now stands at 90 seconds to midnight, the closest to global catastrophe it has ever been. That's the world we're living in. I feel like we're in a catastrophe as a community, and we're in a catastrophe as a planet and as a world. So what is this global doomsday clock? Just so you know, I like numbers and stuff. So it's founded in 1945 by Albert Einstein at the University of Chicago scientists who helped develop the first atomic weapons in the Manhattan Project. The Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists created the doomsday clock 2 years later, using the imagery of apocalypse, which is midnight, and the contemporary idiom of nuclear explosion, which is the countdown to zero, to convey threats to humanity on the planet. The doomsday clock is set every year by the Bulletin Science and Security Board in consultation with its board of sponsors, which include 10 Nobel laureates. The clock has become a universally recognized indicator of the world's vulnerability to global catastrophe caused by man-made technologies. So therefore, in this time of climate, economic, socio-political crises, coupled with constant change, we must reimagine what we do and be innovative, not only what we do, but how we do it. The latest thing, I don't know, I've been playing with ChatGPT. And so just a little bit about myself. I'm a lead AP in building design and construction. My undergraduate is in economics and sociology with a minor in statistics. My first job was working in Canada for Statistics Canada. And coming out of university, I was a project manager, and I managed evaluation of social programs across the country. And I built simulation models, so when politicians say, for example, we're gonna increase pension, I built the models on how it would work and how to pull back the money from everybody. One of my cases that I worked on went to the Supreme Court on same-sex marriages. My model, because we didn't have data, so when we don't have data, we build models. And so I'm definitely a data geek, for sure. So throughout my career, I did that job. And then I got married, moved to the States, lived in San Francisco for 19 years, and worked in tech. And because I like change, I like innovation, it's my thing, I was put on this thing called succession planning in all the companies I've worked for, and got opportunities to do lots of different things. So for example, I manage construction, $750 million in construction, almost three-quarters of $1 billion USD. I worked on the first Clinton climate change initiative. I led that. I also led the first solar development in Northern California, fully solar development, even though I'm not an engineer. And then I became a certified energy manager with the Association of Energy Engineers, so that all the white guys that I worked with could respect me. And then I worked on a lead building. We were becoming in the city and county of San Francisco, do a lead building, and I managed IT. And so I became a lead accredited professional in building design and construction to find a way how to minimize the energy use of our data centers. So I went to cloud 1 million years ago when it was not a thing, and to reduce our energy needs for our building. And that building exceeded all platinum certification in the city and county of San Francisco. So I've had a wide variety of experience because of that. And I'm nosy, I like to learn. So I'm saying that to say this. I was playing with the AI, and the father of AI just said, AI could pose a more urgent threat to humanity than climate change. And our community, I love what Thierry was saying, we tend to be followers. We tend to be last to the game in everything. And because of that, we are not realizing the economic gains that we should do. So I lead the UN Decade, and Rustam is there, a People of African Descent, International Decade for People of African Descent Push Coalition. And I used to co-lead with Richard Sharp. And in that work, you know, we've been fighting for these programs, including the Black Entrepreneurship Program. I have been focused on economic inclusion and development, now called economic justice, for Black people, recognizing from what the speakers earlier said, until we break the money problems we're having, we'll never get any influence. So politics is influenced by people who donate, people who bring their pressure together and vote as a block, not as individuals, right? And people who donate and lobby. And that requires money, and it requires unity, and we're not very good at those quite yet. The Willie Lynch letter, I'm glad Thierry mentioned it. I read that twice a year, you know, to remind myself of what's going on and to identify where I'm seeing that in my life every day. And we have to understand the systemic dynamics at play and not fall for it. So what kind of leader must we be dealing in this time of crisis? We must be leaders that reimagine, replenish, and regenerate both people and the planet as we pursue profit and regenerative solutions. And I'm going to talk about the 5 C's that I think is really important as a leader. Now, we heard some amazing things said by the panel, and those are foundational. What I'm saying builds on those, because if you don't have those, if you don't have trust, right? If you don't have passion, you don't have the drive to make a difference, all those things, none of this makes a difference, right? So the first thing is to be a comprehensive thinker. Second thing is to be a collaborative communicator, true collaboration. Not just talking to people and we sit each other, we smile, and we play the game, right? The person thinks, as Franklin said, that we're collaborating, And then you go away and you steal the idea, you've now extracted, and I think our community, we blame white people, we say they're so extractive. And frankly, we're even more extractive of each other than white people are. Right? Because white people, in most cases, they will underbid you, for want of a better word, undervalue you, but black people don't value you at all. We want everybody to do everything for free, right? We want them to do it for so cheap that they can't even survive themselves and support their families, right? So when we're talking about compensation, you know, that's really important. The third thing is being a caring and courageous leader. Being creative, and, you know, we always talk about innovative. I feel like I'm a very innovative person, but innovation comes from creativity. And our community has that in spades. It's our gift from our Almighty God. Every single one of us does that, day in, day out. And last, being a change manager. Now, Thierry talked about leadership, and you know, the civil rights movement in the US would never be successful without the yin and yang of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. We, all of us, we can't be successful without each other. I had this like kind of vision, for want of a better word, about community leadership. And in this vision, it's each one of us, I was in a kitchen, and somebody had flour. I'm Jamaican, so you know, put that in context. Somebody had flour and water, and they were making roti, just rolling the roti. And then they made some boiled dumplings, and there was no meat, no nothing, right? And then someone else came in the kitchen and brought in another ingredient, and they actually brought in like sugar and oil. And then we made like fried dumplings, and we made some other things. And people kept coming in the kitchen and bringing ingredients. And at the end, we had a huge feast, and it was so much that there was lots of leftover, and we decided to make a business and sell the leftovers. That's the power of community and bringing our talents, each one of us. We may only have one. Some of us has a lot, but if we combine them together, you know, the people who have a lot always think, I'm good by myself. No, we can make a bigger pie, right? We always think we have to cut up the pie into smaller pieces so everybody can get, and then we compete, and we fight, and we feel jealous, and all that. But if we bring our ingredients and we make a bigger pie, right, then everybody can have more, right? And, you know, as we think about, there's this lady that I want to use as an example of this kind of thinking. She's from Kenya. Her name is Wangari Maathai. She's the 2004 Nobel Peace Prize winner, environmentalist, and human rights activist. She was the first African female to win a Nobel Peace Prize. She founded the Greenbelt movement in 1977 to plant trees in Kenya. I think she planted over 6 million trees. But she wasn't just planting trees. She was trying to alleviate poverty and end conflict. She was driven by a connection between the environmental degradation, poverty, and conflict. This lady was a comprehensive thinker. She embodies to me all these things we're talking about. She chose to empower rural women first, many of whom were living in poverty, with economic empowerment. The Greenbelt movement that she started in 1977, before environment was a thing, right? You know, a lot of times white people, it's like they own the green movement, right? And this was before it was. She trained more than 30,000 women in forestry, food processing, beekeeping, and other trades that helped them to earn income while preserving their land and resources. And as a result of that, and she planted 51 million trees in that work. But listen to what she said. She said, I'm very conscious of the fact that you can't do it alone. It's teamwork. When you do it alone, you run the risk that when you're no longer there, nobody else will do it. Now, one of the reasons that Willie Lynch theory works, the divide and conquer. And I see that happens. Honestly, the government divide and conquer the UNDP push coalition many times. And when we are being divide and conquer, what we need, coming from an energy background, there's this thing called distributed systems, right? And distributed systems allow you to have a diversified economy. I'm going to say energy system that is not reliant on any one place. So if you have a breakdown in one area, it doesn't break down the whole system. And we need distributive leadership in our community. We don't need one person, as Terry just said, to be the face of anything. Everybody needs to be the face of everything that we're doing. And we need that knowledge transfer from each other. We need to stop looking at each other when we talk about collaborative leadership. Collaborative leadership is when you're learning from people and people are also learning from you. It's a reciprocal relationship. It's a give and take. It's not you getting all the time or you giving all the time, right? And true collaborations take trust. And sometimes it takes a contract. I'm all about a contract these days with people, because when you have a contract, you can sue them. And I'm very much about suing. My dream is to have a fund, a black fund, so we can sue the government and sue everybody. One of my projects is a Canada Labour Code amendment to make workplace racism a form of workplace violence and harassment. And thank God for some people who have a black class action lawsuit against the government, right, to deal with this issue. Because let's face it, money, when you hit people in the pocket, it makes a difference. And that's what worked in the US, it works here, it works everywhere, so we need to do that. So talk about collaborative, true collaboration, not just a prescriptive collaboration like the government says, right? Let's face it, the government gave community. I copied so the BEP program had 4 pillars, and the other one was procurement. And I modeled the first 3 pillars of the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, because there was $7 billion given to white women in Canada. And I had these, people in this room, including Rustam, can attest to the fact that I used to have these economic inclusion meeting, I call it, to decide on strategies of what we wanted from the government, how we were gonna get it. Of course, they didn't fund procurement because procurement brings money in our pockets, right? But here's the thing, the BEP program was supposed to be an ecosystem. In fact, I named it ecosystem. I submitted a proposal to ISED on this, and it had ecosystem in the title. And what an ecosystem means is that we're working together, right? To build a system that's gonna be automated and whatever. It wasn't meant to be, this group is doing 50 million things, that group is doing 50 million, and we're duplicating, and the idea was, if one of the organizations, say they built culturally informed classes for entrepreneurship, they would be licensing it to other people so they can make some money at the same time and be sustainable, but it would prevent the other people from having to work hard and duplicate the system, right? And create scarcity and waste inefficient use of our money. That money could go towards supporting people. It could go towards giving some funding to Black entrepreneurs, which, by the way, we never got. White people got $25,000 out of that $80,000 that's forgivable. The indigenous community got $25,000 each also. We were supposed to get $25,000, and what we got is almost 200 million in loans. So when people are talking about transfer of money to the community, we need to really stop and think. We didn't get really any transfer. We got loans, which Black community, Black businesses, in fact, Statistics Canada gave me the numbers recently. And I'll give an example for me in Ottawa. I emailed the Black business list that I had, because I do workshops to help them register for procurement opportunities, a third of them bounce back. And Statistics Canada this week confirmed to me that the numbers of black business that was 2018 and now is significantly lower. So how with businesses that are already at the bottom, you want to saddle them with loans? Like, it doesn't even make any sense. Not to say that you don't need a loan, right? What we need is procurements, we need contracts, we need whatever. Then we'll have money to pay back a loan, then we'll have money to do things, right? So obviously, there's some work to be done as a community. The interesting thing about the Nobel Prize, Miss Matai, that I was telling you about, at the end of it, she was using, this was a very innovative approach at the time, right? To address poverty and economic empowerment while building the environment, building people's skill, and making money all at the same time. We need to be challenging ourselves to do this. How do we do that? Now, as the lady talked about the issue with, and it was an innovative thought, if I can't pay somebody what they're worth, how can I share? I tried to start something with ACBN and CAMC, and it was BBPA during COVID, for us to share spaces and share resources so that many black businesses wouldn't go out of business, right? So instead of all of us have a rent to pay, we would share the space, share an accountant, right? So that we can hire somebody in our community and all of us get good service. We can hire a secretary to answer the phone, right? And we all look professional and we hire somebody. Individually, that's not something some organizations can do on their own. But if we join together, we can do it. And we need to think, that's true collaboration of how we can make each other better, right? How we can all benefit from the same story. The next thing is being a comprehensive, strategic, long-term thinker. The numbers say that long-term oriented companies deliver 47% higher revenues, 36% better returns, and generate an average $7 billion more in market capitalization. But the markets have a short-term orientation and people have a short-term orientation. So those are missed opportunities that we could all have. Can you imagine if we could, in the companies and the organizations we serve, bring those kinds of returns back to the spending that we do? Caring, courageous leadership. You know, somebody mentioned about agreeing to disagree. I don't always agree with everybody that I work with in community. But just because I disagree with you on this doesn't mean I disagree with you or I'm your enemy. It means that I'm trying to hold you accountable and make you better so that we can all be better. Not now turn on me and I'm the enemy and I'm like, you know what I mean? And not to say anybody can do that to me because I know my power and I own my own power. But as a community, we need to be able to stand up. We need to be courageous as people to hold each other accountable. And each of us need to be courageous enough that when we're not doing the right thing or when we're making a mistake or we can improve, to own that and make changes. To make changes within ourselves and make changes within our organization. It takes empathy. It takes an ethical conviction, which we need in this era where they said truth, this is, I'm quoting a guy, Visser, said where truth is turgid, morals are malleable, we know that so much, and compromise is commonplace. It's a rare gift, our ethics. And we need to, as a community, keep that, stick with that. And you know, the Bible says that we should keep our word even to our detriment. And I see Theory did that, where he gave his commitment to the children that he was gonna do something for them. And to his detriment, he sold his property to make that happen. A lot of us are working in community to our detriment. We're not earning any money, getting money. My background is in tech. I have a ton of credentials, and some of them I don't even put on LinkedIn. I can make a zillion amount of dollars, but I choose to invest my brain in my community because I have nieces, nephews, friends, mothers, fathers, all the stuff that I want to see do better, and we can't keep the cycle going. We have to be the change we want to see. And last but not least, as a leader, so it takes a regenerative leader is what I'm saying. A regenerative leader is somebody who's creating more, who's creating better, who's thinking about the people and the planet, as well as the outcomes, as well as profits if you're in a for-profit business. You know, I don't come from the nonprofit space. I don't think like a nonprofit, right? And we need to apply those techniques to what we're doing. We need technology. You know the reason why the UN Decade and community could get that money and everybody got together? Because we were poor, and so we were forced to use Zoom to connect. And so we were able to connect across the country in droves of numbers. We had an Are You Listening event, and I think it was about 9.6% of the Black population showed up, because they didn't have to come to a meeting, they didn't have to pay, but they didn't have to find parking, they didn't have to drive, leave their kids, find a babysitter, all this stuff. How can we make things be innovative in making things work, not just for the elites in our community, but everybody who wants to participate? Technology, you know, having those platforms where everybody can give their voice. Just because you're working nights and you're sleeping during the day doesn't mean you don't have a voice and you don't care about what's happening and you don't want to give your input. And how can we, as people, as innovative people, facilitate that process? But you have the idea of theory has the technology and the skill set to make, and if you two partner together, then we can make solutions. To be changing the world for the better, because that's what we do. This is a quest of existentialist magnitude. For many of us, it consumes our careers, our relationships, our lives, and we make sacrifices for that. So we need to make sure that we too are in balance, healthy, and hearty. And then we need to work together systematically to gather the evidence, which is the data, and build a compelling case for action. And finally, we need to be effective storytellers when we communicate about the benefits, the accomplishments we have of changing the status quo. The question is not what, but what, where, and how, and what kind of leader are you going to be? Thank you.
That was amazing. Thank you, Angela, and thank you for everything you're doing. Questions, comments, feedback? Yes. Yes.
Thank you so much for this. That was an amazing conversation. We touched on something I think is so important in terms of, I love the regenerative and I love the green aspect, the analogies you were making. I think that's also something for all the NPOs that are here also to realize. Black, and I'm sure you have probably more data than I do, but Black people, we tend to be in client-facing sectors, right? So when COVID happened, we shut down first because we are in these retail spaces and so on and so forth. And before we talked about diversification of revenue. So instead of thinking, hey, I need money from the RBC, I think we should reimagine communities and nonprofits being the lungs of the community that are connecting into expanding local thriving businesses that are not client facing. Because should there be a second pandemic, then guess what?
Yes.
You shut down. So if you were a nonprofit getting money from the barbershop, getting money from the beauty salon, getting money to all these things we used to do, and now a second COVID happened, you're putting yourself at risk because now the private money doesn't come in. But if you are empowering the next tech entrepreneur, green entrepreneur, the next Andrea Pierce, when COVID happens, you're still getting that funding for your nonprofit because you've empowered these tech entrepreneurs. My question to you, Andrea, is how do you see nonprofit, because I think there is a correlation between nonprofit and for-profit, and media as well. There's no black media because there's no massively successful entrepreneurs that could fund these said black media. How do you see nonprofits understanding the role that they play in the success of for-profit businesses? The same way entrepreneurs, Bay Street, as much as people work for the TD, EY, plays a huge role in supporting entrepreneurs that are taking risks. So I would love to hear you talk on how can nonprofits truly understand the importance of growing for-profit businesses that they could actually then give back the money to the nonprofits.
First, I think nonprofits need to be business oriented. Like, you know, Mr. Excellent said earlier, just because you're a nonprofit doesn't mean you're not making money, right? But you're just reinvesting that money in the organization to good outcomes, right? So they need to be more business-like, to be honest. At the Black Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, we have an ecosystem map we're developing, and it's mapping the actors and the people, including entrepreneurs and the BP program as an example. But we've had conversation with Louis Edgar, with Rustem, with Raymond Gwist, all the Black Funders Network who are nonprofits oriented to get them in because they buy stuff, right? They're an important engine. I think there's probably more nonprofits in Canada than for-profits in the Black community, right? They are an important economic engine, and they need to recognize that and act that way. And some of them have intellect. I was talking to somebody, I'm on a board, like on mental health. It's my mom is a therapist. And, you know, they've been doing culturally informed mental health for almost 30 years. And she created these classes that's culturally informed on anxiety, depression, all the stuff, like culturally informed, how does that impact, because it's very different, how that impacts Black people than other races. And so she was trying to throw it in the nonprofit. I'm like, no, that's your intellectual property. We're gonna license it and we're gonna do this, and the nonprofit can license it from you because you're old and you need money too, right? And you've been working for free, all the community. But here's what she wants to do with it. She wants to give it, like license it to other organizations so that they don't have to recreate the wheel, so that they can offer the service cheap and free and easy. They can get money and funding for it. And the license fee will go back to sustaining and maintaining her thing, and we can have a real ecosystem. You know, we heard people in New Brunswick saying, for example, there was only 1 or 2 Black therapists and 1 left for Toronto, and there was only 1 left. So how do they get services, right? We have solutions for each other. I was amazed. One of the things she does is, you know how many, they said we have a Black mental health issue. We don't have enough people in our community. We do. You know how many people we have that actually have a degree in psychology or social work, but they're all working for trash money, minimum wage in missions, in social service organizations, instead of getting their accreditation to be a registered psychologist or a registered social worker and make at least $100 an hour. And you know what she did? She now, because you know they don't have a lot of funding and the church funds it, she got young therapists in the process. They're offering service and they're getting the experience and they're getting the hours so that they can get their accreditation. She didn't get money for that. She just decided to do that. And we as a community, we get money. How can we think of getting, you know, the government talks about the triple benefits and triple bottom line. How can we get multiple benefits from what we do? We need to be innovative thinkers and think, because the nonprofit sector is so important to us. It's our lifeline. And if they start being a little more innovative, a little more collaborative, a little more of these things, then the businesses won't be in those positions because they could be engines. We're trying to bring them in our ecosystem because they're buying services and goods, and we want them to buy it from the Black entrepreneurs in our ecosystem. Our ecosystem map, what it's supposed to do, as you're talking about addressing, what we're trying to do is bring everybody in that system so that they can collaborate to make joint ventures, to service bigger contracts, to do business with each other, to get mentoring, you know, to even, we've talked to people outside of our system who want to buy business, people, supplier diversity, procurement people. They're like, we don't know where to find Black business. You can come to in our system and find it, and it's open. We're not trying to own it and control it and whatever. And we want business like yours to come and mine it and create new products, new services, and new matching and whatever to build our system. That's what our ecosystem is. That's what we need to really create. Not just name it ecosystem, we need to create ecosystem.
To piggyback on her, nonprofits play a critical role. One thing that I've seen is, I think about 60 or 70% of nonprofits deliver some form of capacity building. A lot of nonprofits. And they're delivering this capacity building on, you know, to people who are supposed to get the skills to open business, to run business, or to expand their businesses. You know, so that's a sector where nonprofits really can instill operational excellence. Why do I say operational excellence? Unfortunately, out of that 70%, about 50%, the people leading the organization are not successful business people. And that's a problem. For me, I think that's a fundamental problem. If you're not able to be a successful businessman, I really don't see how you make somebody else to be very successful. You might just transmit some of the bad habits that you have, you know. So we need to recognize, and that's where partnership comes into place. You know, if you do, I'm not a good businessman, but Ruston Franklin, oh, I love his name, Excellent, and he's living to his name. God bless you. And Excellent is a very successful businessman, and you have at least the capability, the aptitude, adaptability, the influence to bring them to run it, then it can be successful, you know. And that's where I think we as nonprofits, when we are putting out those services out there, we need to make sure either we have the skill set or we bring from the community, because that visualized lens is very important. I'm not saying do not bring Mr. Terry White. You can bring Mr. Terry White. But ideally, you will find in the community someone who can bring that visualized lens in terms of delivering the service.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you. Okay, so, all right, so 3 more. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Go ahead. Akil. Wait, Akil and then.
Sorry. Akil Aline from Gemstar. Playmax Montreal Cultural Association. Gemstar is the name of a program that we're launching that offers basically scholarship, internship, and just overall development opportunities to high-achieving Black high school students. And that relates to my question, because I'm curious as to whether you can provide real-world examples of the services that Black nonprofits offer in the community circulating throughout the community long-term, the benefits that we offer, and how the clients and the folks we serve can then take the benefits they get from our services and keep them cycling through the community. Because what we hope to do with our program is to help develop high-achieving Black students into future professionals who will then hopefully contribute to the program long-term and just to the community overall. So, how many examples are there of that already happening?
You know what, I'm going to say there's one organization that people don't really give a lot of credit to, the Congress of Black Women. If you look at the Congress of Black Women, most of the Black women leaders used to be members of the Congress of Black Women. And a lot of the women that I know that are amazing collaborators and go-getters were mentored under the Congress of Black Women. The Congress of Black Women, believe it or not, owns a building with businesses in it, including a laundry and all this stuff. They had cooperative building back in the day. You know, we tend to nothing, thank you, Thierry, because I see that you're not sexist, but really are black men. If we look at most of our organization in the black community, it's black men. Who's doing most of the work? It's the black women, right? And we're being frankly exploited by black men more than anyone, right? So I think, you know, when we think about organizations, the Congress of Black Women, they give out scholarships. They do all kinds of stuff. Jean Augustine is one of the people that, from the Congress of Black Women, right? So if we look at regenerative behavior that's been happening in the past, they are doing that. They provide affordable housing. They actually own the building. And in that building is many businesses, including the laundromats and some other businesses that are still going all this time. They're not sexy and they don't get a lot of attention, and they do have some succession planning issues, right? But they're an amazing organization that we should all get behind and make sure they get support, right?
Where are they located? Sorry, because I never heard of them.
They're actually across the country. There's chapters across the country, but I think it was started in Toronto. But it's called the Congress of Black Women, right? So that's an organization that has stood the test of time, that has been doing good work, that's been regenerative and actually adding to the ecosystem and creating stuff, right? So they're one organizations. When you talk about, you know, accomplishments.
I just wanted to touch on something that you mentioned in your answer, actually, and the gentleman here about, you know, having those people come back into their service and providing services to organizations and people being paid what they're worth, as you talked about the mental health professional not getting accredited. When we want to pay somebody for work, at the end of the day, as a business, I want to pay someone that has their business number. I'm going to get my GST back because I paid them properly. And if they cannot give me an invoice properly, how can I support that black business? So yes, at BCA we have different hats, right? We're the organization, but we also are part of this BEP. And when people come to us and they want to be part of the programming, the first question is, do you have a business number? And but they're successful because they're selling food from their house and lots of people know them and they're on social media. But it's the minimum measure of success that needs to be, that notch needs to be moved of what that is in the black community and how we support nonprofit. As nonprofit, how do we support the individuals who are doing the steps to further their success, and not just temporary success, but like long-term success.
But I think we also have to be innovative in, you know, I know a lot of black, I'm gonna call them businesses in the making that does stuff, and they don't have a business number and they don't have all that. And we want to nurture them. So, you know, in Ottawa, we have this it's a grocery store called Cool Runnings. And when COVID came, you know, all of us, including my parents, go to Cool Runnings to shop. Now, they don't have any delivery, they don't have anything, and I called them up, I'm like, you need to be delivering, you need to, and the guy's wife is my friend, so I'm like, you need to. They ended up doing the most business, their profits were the highest during COVID. He hired his kids who weren't going to school and his kids' friends, and they were the delivery people, right? And they made so much money. But here's the thing, one of the things he does is, the people who are cooking and whatever, they bring it to his restaurant. He has a business number, and he can give you the invoice, right? So how do we be innovative as we see people? We want to encourage them. We don't want to shut them out of the system, right? And how do we encourage them? Can they partner with another business? Maybe give them a cut, right? A lot of us are so cheap. We don't want to give referral fees. We don't want to give a cut. We want everything ourselves. But we need to start being more business-like. And how do we do that, right? There's some organization that has a business. Can they be the sub, you know what I mean? Can they be and have these people? So we need to think some ways of how we can encourage and all that, not always think that, okay, you're not professional because you don't have a business number, because someday, as they grow, they could be.
Amazing, thank you, well said. Okay, so we have, how many more questions do we have in the room? Just so I could get an idea, because all right, 1, 2, 3. All right, so 3 more questions, and then we're going to wrap because we're a little bit over time, so I just want to make sure everybody gets out here and gets to the next.
So, hi, good morning. I'm sorry I'm late to the conversation. I know we veered off from leadership and we're going to the business side. But first of all, my name is Annick Silencieux. I'm the executive director of an organization called Support Black Charities, and one of the mandates that we have is to bring more charitable giving to nonprofits around the world. And one of the components is businesses. We want to keep the money in the family, and we want to promote a thriving Black ecosystem, which is community, Black business, Black organizations. And I think she asked the question a little bit, but I want to know, as in the business mind, what are the limitations from businesses to sponsor and to engage with organizations? I know on one side is that I think organizations don't show their impact enough so that businesses can know where their money is going to go. But I'm just asking a question because you're in the room, and I know there's other business people in the room, just to get your opinion on what do you think some of the limitations, aside from the ones that we've mentioned already. How can we make it easier for nonprofits to be attractive to businesses so they can cooperate and keep the money in the family? Thank you.
I think being a business, right? If you're showing that you're doing good work, you're doing all this stuff. I'll give you an example, like, and I'm not going to use any names, but I was at a community engagement for a ecosystem partner who got a lot of funding, a ton of funding, and the province that they're in also gave them a huge funding. They have like about 5 mil or close to it, at least, that I know of. We went and did community engagements across the province and the organization. So we met with close to 200 people. Even in the city where they're located, of the 200 people, 4 people have heard of them. And they have the most amazing social media stunting, like, right? They have the most amazing whatever, but as far as I'm concerned, obviously not much under the hood, right? We need to have stuff under the hood. We need to stop worry about like structure and all this stuff and think about outcomes. What are the outcomes we're producing that's positive? And then how do we share that story? I personally don't want to give to a company that I think is not being run properly, right? And so if people are seeing the real work that you're doing, the impact of what you're doing, this organization that I'm on the board about mental health, we got a call from our mosque, one of the mosques. The imam called us. Since COVID, 40 Black organizations support mental health. He called all 40 before he called us. We're the only organization who actually does counseling. Everybody was doing courses, doing whatever, and they got funding and they got whatever, right? But what's the outcome for our community? Like, we are really, we are faking and being prescriptive like white people. White people check the box on us like they're really trying to help us. We know they're not. We have to help ourselves. And we're replicating that same colonialist system within our thing, right? I was at a course for women, Black women, and it was course number 12, which is the last graduating course. And the women were asking me, how do I price myself? How do I know what to charge for a contract? They've been through 12 courses with this organization. So obviously this organization is not giving the best service to our people. We need to be giving the best of ourselves to our own people, right? And we need to value our own people and show the outcomes, tell your story, like not just stunt on whatever, have real people and real results that people can see. So there's a new thing, I was in the UK on social innovation, and even Canada is doing, US is doing outcomes-based contract. Outcomes-based, I really believe we need to be doing that as a community to kick us out of that like mentality into being more business-like, where outcomes is what we have to measure. If you don't accomplish those outcomes, they take away your funding and take away kids. Too many of us are faking it, frankly.
My name is Olivia, and I'm going to step away from the business side, more nonprofit. I've been a part of the CDNBCA, a nonprofit organization, as a kid in their programs, and now I'm working for the organization. But as a, thank you, but as a Gen Z millennial, I'm like the only person that is working in nonprofit, and all of the information that I'm receiving, that I'm hearing from people is like very powerful, like, and empowering. But once everyone who's like in their like mid 40s now, you guys get older, who's going, like, I try to talk to my peers, and all they want to do is get their degree. They want to go, and they want to go make money. So it's like, oh, I want to do this. How much am I going to get paid? And then it's like, okay, you'll get paid like, this kind of salary. And then they're like, no. And it's just like, it's kind of discouraging because there's so much we can do, and we're talking about the future, but the future is us. And like, I don't see that many of us in this room right now, like just in general. So it's just, where are they? And like, how do we get them in and like passionate about it? Yeah.
So social problems, right? We have like competition. Harvard does competition where people, there's what is that, the challenge. There are tons of challenges and tons of way of making money. We're not tapped into that. Where you can solve a problem and make money. They could make money solving our social problems, right? He has an AI that matches. Funding is the biggest issue, we say, both for businesses and nonprofit in our community. And we have a tool now that solves that can make him money and help us at the same time, right? We can get our young people to think about that. I think one of the things as a community we need to do, the Jewish community, they've cornered banking in certain areas. What's our areas of expertise in our niche? And we need to get there before other people. I feel like I remember a million years ago, and I want to date myself, I was a Microsoft certified engineer. And I remember I graduated from the first class ever of that in San Francisco. Cisco, Microsoft, everybody I know, they were smart. They accepted the job, and I stayed with my company because I was loyal. It was so dumb. But anyway, they're all millionaires, and I'm like an idiot still. But what I want to say is, at the time, Microsoft certification was the thing. We were making a ton of money. You could charge like $300 an hour. And if somebody wants you in 2 hours or less than 24 hours, you double and triple your rates. Now Microsoft certification is trash, right? Because 1 million people went in and take the exam, and a lot of our people are now in spaces. We need to be ahead of the curve. AI chat GPT, are you playing with it? Is the kids playing with it? The other thing is we need knowledge transfer. We need knowledge transfer, and what are the tools to make that? When we do a training, you can record it on Zoom and share it with a ton of people. We don't need to have a seminar every single day on the same thing. You record it and you share it, make it public, make it whatever. I'm working with, because he's sponsoring my Canada Labour Code amendment that I've been working on forever. But we've been talking about these ability to make changes and to empower ourselves, how do we get it to our young people? So we're going through with a cohort that's going to start in September, and we're going to have politicians talking to them. We're going to record it. They're going to take a project and use it, not come and listen like an idiot and do nothing with it, but they're going to be doing something with it and making change. And we're recording it and sharing it with community. We need to do that knowledge transfer. Whatever we learn, we record it and we share it, right? We have the tools, and it's cheap, it's easy, and that's how we can transfer the knowledge and get our young people and everybody in. So we need to sit down. What we need is a community strategic plan. We don't need to talk about the how of what we're doing. We need to talk about what it is we want to do and what are the outcomes that we want and the metrics, because we fight about how. Every one of us, that's where we community organization break down, because people are like, I don't like the way they're doing it. We all do everything differently. We shouldn't be fighting about that. We should be fighting about what we should want is the outcome. If you're getting the outcome, it doesn't matter if it's gerbil behind the wheel, my boss used to say, right? Because I used to be one of those person. I'm like, it's not efficient, it's not. He's like, if you get the outcomes you want, if it's a gerbil behind the wheel, who cares? And that's the kind of leader we need to be, right? Not care. Is somebody like your issue about salary? If the person, you give them the outcome you want and they do it, who cares if they're spending 8 hours or 20 hours? If they then want to go sell themselves out to something else and make more money, they'll probably stay with you because you've got interesting work that's purposeful, right? And then they can do something else. So there's so much opportunities. We need to expose each other and expose our kids especially to it. With 1 in 3, this is my other soapbox issue, 1 in 3, the average age of black community is 29. 1 in 3 is unemployed. 1 in 3. 1 in 3 of our future is in jeopardy. We're in a crisis ourselves, right? So Yeah, in Canada, Canada-wide. So that's Statistics Canada numbers, not mine, right? So what are we gonna do with this, right? We've got ChatGPT, we have so many people talking about tech, and they're talking about old tech and coding and bullshit. Nobody codes anymore. We have AI that codes. We have GitHub, you can go take code and put it together yourself. Like seriously, it's like numbers. Everybody knows how to code. Let's stop, let's look towards the future, how we're gonna position ourselves, what's our niche, creating capabilities in our community that's gonna protect our future. They said, most of our jobs are gonna be gone with ChatGPT. Not me, I'm innovative, that's my skill set, right? And I'm using ChatGPT. I'm making it my, you know what? But what I'm saying is that's what we need to think. And we need to come together and have these conversations and do something about it, not just talk.
And I just wanted to add to that. First and foremost, I think we should clap for her for being the one from that generation that's here. The second thing that I really firmly believe in and is the power of social entrepreneurship. So when we did the event here, we had Gary Vee first, Charlemagne the God, and I saw all the young black kids, black boys, black women come into this. The minute we brought Malala, you should have seen how people mobilize. So there is such a thing now, and it is a trend. The idea that entrepreneurship cannot be social and profitable is rooted in mendacity, complete mendacity. And the people that drink that Kool-Aid is us. So young black folk think that you, for example, are a social entrepreneur. You will most likely lead the BCA one day. You will be called to innovate. And this is a call for action for anybody here. In communication, there's a thing called encryption, decryption. Most of us are encrypting messages that is being decrypted by city government, but in the meantime, the medium we use and the message is not adapted to talk to the youth. So I'll give you an example. I worked on a project called Pose Coalition, dropping the guns, stop killing each other in Montreal, all them kids, especially the Haitian kids where I come from. The problem was all the kids are in a neighborhood that the government is not in. And this neighborhood is not called Montreal North. It's not called Scarborough. It's not called Jade Finch. It's called Snapchat. It's called TikTok. And when I told that to the elected officials, like, what do you mean? This is where the beef starts. This is where I threaten you, I kidnap you, and if you're not in that neighborhood, you're not talking to your generation. So everybody here, you're a black nonprofit, right now, you need to be in these neighborhoods that you want to talk to. So if you have a pop-in TikTok and a pop-in Snapchat, you're going to see these kids pull up, and you're going to see these kids come into your program. But in our communities, what we do, especially young black boys, we monetize them by saying we're going to keep them out of gangs, we're going to do this, and then white people give us money, and the next thing you know, we call the gang leaders and say, hey, I need some young black boys to pull up because elected officials going to be there. That's a fact. I've seen this. I've been faking it like Queen Andrea said. So to answer your question, Queen, drive the change that you know, because none of us here can encrypt the message and decrypt it like you can. So start a TikTok. That's what we did. We started a TikTok gang, and now we got ahead of the beefs. So it dropped, and then we came with the data, right? So I would invite anybody here in your communication strategy, make sure you're encrypting the message is properly encrypted, and the medium. Yeah. If you're on Facebook, guess what? None of y'all don't care about Facebook. Yeah. Y'all don't even care about Instagram, right? So let's be cognizant of this, even in business. You want a succession plan, you want talented people, you talked about talent, are you on TikTok? There you go, thank you, that's it.
Can I say just one last thing?
Yes, and then Dwight's going to ask the last question, then we got to close.
I have a project that I'm working on. It's a social project. It's a hate project. I'm looking at hate on social media because we know hate. Black community experience the most hate. The numbers in statistics gonna say we're twice the number of other communities, and it's underreported. So can you imagine what the real number is? So we're using AI to interrogate on Twitter, on Reddit, and stuff to gather our own data. To address this issue. And we're using our black young people on our project, right? So they get excited. it's a social change thing. They're not necessarily, at first they're not about social change necessarily, but they were about the AI and getting practice because it's university students and I put it out. And now they're like, how do you want to come? They want to come to the UN Permanent Forum for People of African Descent. They want to understand how they can make a change because their skill is tech, for example. How are we leveraging what their skills are? Even as he's talking about TikTok and all that stuff, I still have social media because I don't want to cuss anybody out. But the thing is, how do we leverage our kids who are really good at that to do that story for you? There's a lady over there that talked about how do we tell our story and get business attracted. Get those kids to do it for you on TikTok and pay them a little money. The universities have all these students who are looking for experience. They're free. So if you don't know how to, reach out to me. I work at a university. We can get you all kinds of free labor.
Hello. Yeah. Wow. This is just amazing conversation. It's unfortunate that it has to come to an end at this point. But just like some really quick just responses. Akil, you mentioned of course Playmass and Gemstar. I represent Action, and we are also building a mentorship program. We actually have an informal mentorship program that's been operating for a number of years, and we're just at a little bit of a different age. So we would love to find a way to collaborate and sort of make that connection. Yeah, and then business numbers. I don't know about other provinces. In Quebec, it's super easy. We've had our business number from like my mom would say, like donkey years ago. And it's really not a big deal. I think that if we can't even get business numbers, then we really just need to, we need to actually change just the way that we structure our organizations. And I had a question for you. So this is my question. A lot of times I see we have a little bit of an us versus them mentality in our community. We have the people who are quote unquote successful in terms that maybe wider society, majority society would view as successful. And a lot of times those people really want to distance themselves from the rest of the, Afro-Black community because they feel like, oh, well, they're not on my level, right? And how do we find a way to actually communicate in a way that's respectful? And I was wondering what you would think of maybe potentially like a code of conduct, because everybody is just kind of doing their thing, and some business owners don't want to associate with others because, oh, I don't like the way they do their thing, and then there are a lot of ethical sort of mismatches, just strange behavior happens. I'll just call it strange behavior. That's all.
I think you know what, we need some tools like NDAs and contracts is one thing. We do need the UN DPAD Push Coalition. We have a code of ethics. We ask people to sign it. You'd be interested. A lot of people don't want to sign it because they don't want to be held accountable, right? And you know what? Those are the people who will muck with you in the end, and I see it. So when the code, it's good, but most people don't want to sign it. And sometimes we get so desperate, we're like, we want them on board. No, you only need the people who will sign it on board. It may be a little mighty force. In Jamaica, they go, you're little, but you're Talawa, right? But I think, too, there's a lot of people who want to help in our community who are successful that are under the radar. It's not because they think they're better than us. They see the things we're doing wrong, and they see the infighting and all this stuff, and they're like, why am I going to bother with that hassle? These people don't even have a code of ethics. Like, why am I getting involved? I get so much help from people that are under the radar that I'm like, please, can you help me with this? Can you do that? And they do it, but they don't want to be in the forefront, and they don't, because they're like, people want to take each other down, all the slavery mentality stuff and the trauma that we have is the problem, and we need to deal with that inside, in as much as which is very tough to have conversations and hold each other accountable, because people get offended and they think you're their enemy. It's like, no, I love you. That's why I'm taking the risk to tell you that you're not doing this correctly, and I can help you and whatever, right?
That's amazing.
And I think that those are, so those people, ask them for some help with some projects that are, I get help with my hate AI project, right? They give me help because I have the idea, and they're like, wow, that's amazing. Like, right? So if you come up with an idea and ask them, it doesn't have to be big, formal, whatever, they'll participate.
So thank you. Thank you very much,
Yes.
Andrea.
Can I get a
so
round of
please applause Andrea, Pierce, Gregory, excellent. Here, Mr. Thierry Lindor. So thank you for sharing your vision and your experience. And also thank you everyone for being here this morning. So it was 9 o'clock meeting this morning, so everyone who was there yesterday know why I'm insisting on that 9 o'clock thing. So now the lunch, whether you got tickets or not, everyone is invited to the lunch, which is on the 4th floor. But of course, they're gonna scan your thing, but let's say you didn't get your inscription, it doesn't matter. You can go downstairs and share the lunch, because we have five speakers and panelists. And also the timing. It starts technically at 11, but you can start right now to start taking your food, because around noon we're going to start the discussions. But there's like a lot of people, so please go downstairs on the 4th floor, and so we'll see during the lunch. So maybe the last word?